Hello and welcome to Just Onside. It's been, it seems like a month since we last shot, but I think it's only been 2 weeks. There's been no Premier League football, so it's not been really exciting. But it all kicked off on Friday. We'll talk about that. That was part of the relegation battle. But my word, there was a massive result yesterday. And OS, this league just never stops giving. I thought it was a foregone conclusion. If you look at the table, 9 points in front, it does look like a foregone conclusion, but I think it's far from it. So, firstly, how are you, and what's your take on what's been happening, especially yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a number of things we need to cover. You've got Pakistan taking center stage on the world scene, trying to broker peace. Uh,
It's not worked,
Ty,
has it?
Ty, Ty,
They've all gone home
yeah,
empty-handed.
they have indeed. Tyson Fury's big return. Ayub. So we've got a host of topics to cover. Ayub, where shall we start, Selby?
There's only one. I mean, it was. I think
Do
that's
we
the
have
reason
to?
why they.
Do
I
we
think
have
that's the
to?
reason. Yeah, I think that's the reason why the talks collapsed. It was. I think they're Arsenal fans. It was. They just. They couldn't take any more. Yeah, it
Yeah.
has to start there. I mean, it was. Uh, I mean, by all accounts, I mean it's obviously the pressure is on, but you would have expected at home against Bournemouth, who obviously are a very tidy side, but certainly you would have expected Arsenal to get the points, and maybe there's slightly tougher games to come ahead. But a big shock. I was at a wedding over the weekend, and I was with some Arsenal fans, and they were distraught. They were absolutely distraught, much to my amusement. But I'm sure they might have the last laugh when we go down. But for the time being, it was a, a real shock to the system. So we've got to start there. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, obviously it's almost a common theme about Arsenal bottling it, but it seems to be the case that they're probably doing it again, and this will be the most dramatic of bottles. So you take it away. What was your thoughts on the game, and where do you think it puts Arsenal? I mean, as I said, they still they've got points in the bag. Man City still need to make up quite a lot of ground, but it still keeps them in the race. So go on, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. You look, we haven't shot for a couple of weeks. Since then, they've exited two competitions. Obviously, lost the final to Man City, deservedly so. Did not play well at all. They obviously lost in the FA Cup to Southampton. Very disappointing. Should have had enough to get through Southampton. So you've got to kind of marry yesterday on the backdrop of all of that. A narrow win away at Sporting Ayub, where you'd think still even now that they should be favourites to get through that and get into the semi-finals. But you've got to work off the back of those results, because on the overarching picture, the big picture, it is a run that they will have to arrest very quickly. Otherwise, to your point, the level of scrutiny and ridicule, I think it's fair to say, would be seismic. Perhaps not something that we've seen in domestic football in the highest league for quite some time, in terms of what was a very promising season, and to not then seal the deal. On a smaller lens, firstly, just very quickly, Bournemouth were more than deserved winners on the day. I thought they were playing the more calm and cohesive football. I thought Iriola, who's a coach that I know you've got a lot of time for, is really showing his worth. I think that's now 12 unbeaten. Arsenal, interestingly, were the last team to beat them. I think around Christmas time or just before. But they were worthy winners. Played the better stuff. Tactically very astute in terms of closing off angles. The blueprint to beat Arsenal is not difficult, if you ask me. You can either press, because you know they're a very negative and cautious team, words that I've used consistently on this podcast that you but they were very kind of methodical in how they went forward. Look, does it help that they've got essentially a week to prepare, and Arsenal are now right in the thick of games? Yeah, of course, there's got to be some impact there, because Arsenal do have some injuries. So that's not an excuse. That's just an explanation of how these things sometimes pan out. They looked the fresher team. They played the better stuff. They had better running off the ball. They had more, again, cohesion to their attacks. They were getting their fullbacks really bombing on. You can't think of one situation yesterday when Miles Lewis-Skelly or Ben White got on the overlap or got on the outside, got to the byline, similar to what you were seeing from Jimenez and Triffer for Bournemouth. But yeah, deserved winners, tactically out. Thought there was never a period in the game which is the most surprising thing at a game at the Emirates where Arsenal were dominant. Not even for a 5 minute period, 10 minute period. You think after getting a very fortuitous penalty, you can argue
Mm.
how you see it, but I still think it's very fortuitous, given the fact that the ball is just bobbling around. He's very close. Is his arm a bit high? Yes, but I think it's fortuitous. Very lucky, very fortunate. Lovely penalty dispatched by Gyökeres. But you think off the back of that, if you're watching the game, that right, come on, like getting the ascendancy, dominate, maybe even try and get a goal before half time to go into half time with the lead. So overall, on the playing side of you, much the weaker team yesterday. Why is it happening in terms of some of the key elements of the game? Are you a lot of what we've said before? Risk averse, cautious. Raya having the second highest passes from the Arsenal side, just behind Declan Rice. 38 times the ball was passed to David Raya yesterday from Arsenal. You saw many times, you didn't watch the game, you were at the wedding, but there were many times where the ball and the play just stopped. And I watch those situations every day when I'm watching Arsenal play football. Gabriel, Saliba, back to Raya, and the play stops and it gets them in trouble. I've got a bit of a bugbear about football. Either the ball's going to be in motion or the player's going to be in motion. But when both stop, you're going to run into problems because teams nowadays, if you remember early on when City were playing this season, Ayub, James Trafford got himself into bother
Mm.
doing the same thing. And I remember speaking about it, that either the ball or the player is always going to be in motion. If you stop, teams are too adept at closing angles, pressing, nicking. Bournemouth probably should have got a goal even from those situations when Raya seemed nervous. And just in terms of the negativity, Ayub, if you're going to play in a way that's not progressive, that's not risk friendly, if you're not going to consider that, oh, there's some games when we should just be playing Rice as a number six. Now, look, if you look at some of the minutes played, Ayub, again, no excuse, but even science tells you that some of these players are running on fumes. Zubimendi, I think it was last month, three, maybe 4 games ago, he'd exceeded already the minutes that he played last season. So these are the critical games, critical juncture where your legs are a bit heavy. So firstly, physically, you're not feeling great, but the pressure's huge. I mean, these are big matches, and you've got to be able to deal with that. But a lot of these players, you can tell they're just running off fumes. They're not playing well enough. They're not running. They're not running off the ball. There's nothing off the cuff when you watch Arsenal. It's been my biggest issue. No patterns of play, no cohesion, no attacks where you're thinking, oh, that's lovely. That's really nicely worked. Everything's very deliberate. Everything's very ball to feet. And at the highest level of you're going to get caught out. There's no chance in the Champions League, if you ask me. You watch a PSG dismantle Liverpool. You watch the highly skilled offensive play that you saw at the Bernabeu, 40 shots between Real Madrid and Bayern. Arsenal are not on that level. Let's just not. And you might argue, well, they've beaten Bayern Munich, but they beat PSG last year in the group stages. And it's a
Mm.
different game when you're playing August to December than it is when you're playing March and April. April historically has been Arteta's most difficult month. If you actually look at games played from April 1st onwards, Guardiola's record is imperious to say at the least. I think it's a ridiculous amount of points in the league. I think there's a chasm of about 28, 30 points between the two teams or something along those lines. So, look, this is the critical time. Slightly on the larger picture, if I may, just very quickly, and then I'm happy to hear your thoughts. This is a team crippled with fear. It's a team crippled with a nervousness. And some of that has to come, unfortunately, from the manager. The way he's, I guess, used his troops in the early part of the season, you can tell some of them are running on fumes. He's got some injuries, but I think, and fine, you can point that out. Yesterday, we're missing some critical players, Timber, Calafiori, as he obviously came into the team, Saka's missing. But you've got to be able to deal with that. Nobody wants to hear that. And the reason why I think he has to take some responsibility is because it's a team in his own identity in terms of caution, putting a lot of emphasis on defending, and and this is the most important point if that I see, that when then games come where it's going to be nip tuck and you've got to deal with the psychological elements, let's say, I think then muscle memory, so to speak, kicks in, and you're cautious by nature, and those games become quite cautious and very kind of anxiety filled. which means that then you can't really play your best stuff. If you're a free flowing team and you've got attacking muscle memory to lean on, then when games get tough, you're still going to be able to rely on the way you play your stuff. I don't expect PSG to come to Liverpool and sit in. You'll see. They'll play their stuff, which might give Liverpool a chance, by the way. But they have such confidence in their attacking potency that they will play what they believe to be their identity. And I think when things get difficult and tense, and this is 22 years of history that Arsenal are carrying, that club's carrying, the squad's carrying, this manager's carrying, I think reverting to type, which is we're a cautious team, is not going to work. Now, he's not going to be able to fix that in the next 3, 4 games, by the way. He's not all of a sudden going to say, right, we're going to become prime Barcelona. We're going to go attack. We're going to be on the front foot and we're going to dominate these games. It doesn't work that. This is a psychological issue now, aligned with a few physical limitations given the volume of games and all the rest of it. Again, not an excuse. It's just you can physically see that some of these players are not as fresh or as potent or as mobile as they were perhaps earlier this season. And that's just simply volume of minutes. And some of that the manager has to take responsibility for as well. So I think overarching the summary is that until such time are you that Arsenal win the Premier League title, these accusations that are leveled at them, these kind of funny remarks that you get on social media and radio and all the rest of it, I think it's fair. I think it's warranted. This is unprecedented. There's not another team, if you ask me, that would play in the way Arsenal did. That's not to say that you don't see teams losing games game week 32, game week 33 when they're in the ascendancy, but you would not see a performance like the one they put forward yesterday. And what I mean by that is you'd see a team might lose, but they'll have moments, they'll have chances. Maybe the other goalkeepers had an absolute, kind of great afternoon, save after save, and you say, look, it is what it is. It's one of those days. They were inept. They were abject. It was their worst performance of the season. I thought their offensive output generally is average. I thought yesterday was probably relegation fodder in terms of the way their attacking output was. And that for me is a psychological thing as much as it is a physical thing. I think Arteta needs to somehow stumble over the line this year. And I think he'll arrest some of this in the summer. Next season, I still believe, as I've always said, you just very quickly, that if they get over the line in the Premier League this season, I think they'll be much better for it. I think they'll be much better in the seasons to come. However, given that the lead, and the kind of force that they were for the first 20, 25 games, attacking has always been like this. They just had a lot of set pieces that got them out of trouble. But when it gets tense, Arteta's perhaps misjudged that this team is also then going to revert into very kind of nervous football. And it's nervous football that's costing them right now. They were not good enough. They've got to look themselves in the eye. They've got a huge game midweek. Obviously, a huge game next week, which we'll perhaps touch on briefly in terms of the ramifications of that after today's game. But I think right now, Ayub, they're in a world of trouble. I think the outside noise is going to be deafening. Heading into that game next weekend. And if you're about being champions and if you've got the mentality of champions, you've got to look at that as an opportunity and not as a stressful situation. And that's what this Arsenal team has to answer.
It's really well summarised. I mean, there's some interesting points that you've raised as well. And it's the first time, I mean, it's not brutal in terms of criticism for Arteta, but this is probably the strongest I've heard you in terms of having a go at Arteta. But what I picked up on was when you were sort of saying about sort of the default setting when the pressure's on, that you revert to type. And I think that's a really, really good point because it's, I mean, there are some teams that attack is the best form of defense. So when they're against the ropes, they come out fighting. And maybe that is the best strategy. But for Arsenal, I suppose it's the complete opposite. I mean, it was always going to be, I mean, looking back, Bournemouth are always going to be a tricky side because I think their sort of modus operandi is to try and sort of always be safe first. And once they're safe, I think it's just a case of I think Iriola is quite an expansive type of coach. They're in a very safe position. So really, I think they almost look forward to these big games now because their objective is to stay up, which they've done. Now it's to try and enjoy and express ourselves. So really, they were always going to be a slightly tricky fixture, but I did expect Arsenal to be too strong for them. I mean, I thought at best, when it was 1-1, I thought at best Bournemouth might just get a draw out of the game. I never expected them to lose. Uh, and it's you're right about the background noise. I mean, yesterday was. I mean, it's not an accurate snapshot. But
Mm.
apart from the two Arsenal supporters, every other supporter that was there or every attendee of the wedding wanted Arsenal to lose. So it's a club which is not very liked. I may sort of pick up on that with you to just see is
Mm.
there a reason why that is? Because there are some clubs that have been successful, but they've been reasonably well liked. But Arsenal, to a man yesterday, and there was a number of people I was with. Uh, all of the fans who weren't Arsenal supporters wanted Arsenal to lose, and they were delighted when they lost. So sort of touching up on that as well. What's the reason? Is it Arteta? Is it the club? Is it the style of play? What is it? I mean, I've got my own takes on it, but what do you think is the reason why it seems to be a club that's very disliked?
Yeah, I think there's two things at play here. You obviously, firstly, in the part of the world that you're living in, which I obviously lived in as well, and I still call home, quote unquote. And the social circles that we operate in, mainly there's three main factions, I would argue, in terms of support, and that's Liverpool, Manchester United, and Arsenal. I would say in terms of the three main. Now you'll get brackets of Manchester City supporters and a few Chelsea supporters, not least in your household,
Hmm.
and you'll get one Leeds fan essentially. So I mean, but in amongst it, I think you would agree that those are the three main kind of club factions that are formed in terms of your friends, in terms of your family, and what have you. And I think there is this kind of whether it's kind of WhatsApp groups and what have you, where there's a lot of good banter flying around. You're always keen to see the others lose, and I think that's fair enough. I mean, that's been there since the kind of age old time or what have you. And I don't think there's anything too sinister about it. Liverpool fans don't want Manchester United to win. Manchester United perhaps don't want Arsenal to win. Arsenal, and it's always like that. If you're not going to win, what is interesting, however, is when you think about it, is that because there's perhaps not as many, at least within our circles, Manchester City fans, that people revert to say, well, I prefer Man City to win it than let's say Arsenal to win it, which I find surprising a little bit given obviously what's hanging over Manchester City as well as their dominance. Normally there's a case of a little bit of variety is good because otherwise predictable outcomes in sports is never good from an entertainment perspective. So I think there's a little bit of that you want to see some of your kind of friends suffer. Otherwise they will be insufferable. And Arsenal, just like any other group, whether it's Liverpool fans, a section, Liverpool fans, section of United fans, will have their own kind of 5-10% of insufferable fans. And we all know that. So I don't really read too much into that. I don't think it's a club as a whole. I don't think it's a fan base as a whole. I try to think that I'm fairly reasonable when it comes to talking about Arsenal. That's one side of things. I think the second side of things that you just very quickly is that I think the football they play is not gonna you're not gonna acquire the centre ground, are you, so to speak? I mean, Arsenal fans will ultimately talk about the end justifying the means. Now, the end may well not justify the means in the end, and we'll see. But if they do pick up a Premier League trophy, they'll say, "Well, we got there, or we stumble, whatever." But it doesn't. It won't be an asterisk, or there won't be an argument in 20 years' time when they talk about it. They'll say 2025, 2026 Premier League champions, Arsenal Football Club. So I think in terms of that centre ground, those kind of neutrals, those kind of laissez-faire kind of fans who are like just happy to just watch a game of football will watch Arsenal and think, what the hell is this? I mean, I don't want to be watching this tribe, in terms of day in, day out. And to be honest with you, I watched Champions League midweek. As you know, it's at a very unruly hour for us, 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. And it's a tough watch. And Arsenal are a tough watch. I'm an Arsenal fan. They're a tough watch. They don't blast teams named other than Leeds United, and other than that, they play very cautious and risk averse football. It's not very good watch. Absolutely, you can't tell me that there's millions of hundreds of neutral fans rushing to watch prime Atletico Madrid, for example. It's just horses for courses, and it's what you like. So I think there's some of that because of the style of play that is not as entertaining. If you remember Barcelona, even when you weren't Barcelona fans, Pete, Messi, Iniesta, Xavi, Busquets, and all the rest of it, it was as though, this Barcelona team, the football they play is beautiful, all the rest of it. And that is a accurate depiction, but they allow you to kind of capture that kind of middle ground of, let's say, neutral fans who can admire the beautiful game. So I think those are the two elements perhaps in play there. That's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're probably pretty accurate. I mean, for me, there's a little bit more affection towards Pep as well, especially latterly as well. I mean, you know me, I'm a sort of political animal as well, so uh, there's more affection, but primarily it's the style of play. I think it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? It's uh, Arsenal is I mean, for an Arsenal fan as well, you're saying it's a tough watch. Now, for me as a Leeds fan, it I can accept a real stodgy performance as long as the results are there. But we're in a completely different dynamic to Arsenal. I think Arsenal have the players, they have the caliber of players to play a more attractive football. But I think he's just been far too conservative, far too cautious. And there's something about I don't know what it is about Arteta. He's not a certainly from my perspective. I mean, I've not watched every interview, but he doesn't seem a likable character or somebody that you sort of warm to. I mean, Pep is. I mean, he does sometimes rub people up the wrong way. He does get a little bit abrasive, but he's an engaging character. There is something quite sort of ebullient about Pep, and he obviously plays a really, really nice, attractive brand of football. But it, it just ultimately, I suppose, sport is entertainment. Arsenal isn't entertaining. Manchester City, even though this season they've been a little bit more pragmatic. So it's not fair just to sort of say that they play attractive football. This season they have been a little bit more. And I suppose it's the personnel ultimately. If you haven't got the players that they used to have, maybe he has to have a slightly different approach. But ultimately, the DNA of Manchester City, going back to what you said originally, is to be on the front foot, to play attractive football. And I think in terms of a spectacle, in terms of obviously what the purists would want, I'd certainly sort of say that really Manchester City winning the league would be better because in a sense, it reinforces the way that you should play football. Because ultimately, if there is a team that is playing quite negative or quite cautious and it wins, it obviously attracts other people. It's like with this year. This year has been uh, long throws and set plays
Mm.
because if it works, there are other teams that will adopt that. So in that respect, from a purist point of view, I do hope Manchester City win. Uh, uh, but there are other reasons as well. There are political reasons as well, which we won't go into. But there are obviously other reasons as well. But what it certainly made it this year has been it's been one of the most amazing, fantastic leagues, both at the top end and at the bottom end. I've got to be honest. I mean, I did. I mean, it's been one where I've said, "Oh yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. It's a done deal." I still think it's going to require a Herculean effort from Man City because if you look at the table now, as I said, there's games in hand, but uh, I'm not absolutely convinced that this team, Manchester City, will win those games in hand. What perhaps gives me, if I was a Man City fan, cause for optimism is that result, the cup result. I think that was a pivotal, not
Yeah,
just a result, but the performance. I think it
yeah,
almost, I mean, it was if they were short of belief, certainly that performance, Man City gave them that belief. For Arsenal, it's the other way around. It just made them worried again, thinking, hang on, we're probably not as robust and invincible as we thought we were. So I think that, and I said it at the time as well, that could be a pivotal result. And
yeah,
just going back to that result, do you think it was a
yeah.
pivotal result?
I do in terms of heading into next week, Ayub. I think you're right. There was no doubt. Again, I thought the Eze injury heading into that game was a critical one because in terms of linking, Arsenal are such a functional team, Ayub, that you need a sprinkling of, let's say, connectivity in terms of midfield strike. Otherwise, I mean, heading in with a duo of Havertz and Gyökeres for City, they'll feel comfortable with that. You've not got anybody really running speed lightning in behind, and equally, you're missing the smarts of let's say a lovely silky number 10 where you can't quite get to them and they keep you a yard short and all the rest of it, which as he can do when he's at least playing in his pomp, and he definitely has to be more consistent. I think, yeah, absolutely. The way it was done, I don't want to say it was a kind of a emasculating performance, but that's what came to mind. It was as though City were like, especially, and the only bit I would disagree with you is about how pragmatic they've been. I actually think since January, since Semenyo's signing, I think offensively they've been as good as, in a sense,
Mm,
what you've
yeah.
seen from them previously, at least from us. So they've improved as the months have gone on this season. I just think it was somewhat of an emasculating performance in the sense that also couldn't offer anything, couldn't get
Mm.
out. I think some of that is personnel attribute deficiency in terms of the type of players that we have. I think you need to have speed lightning in transitions so that teams have to honour that speed on the counter. It's not something Arsenal have right now. You can pretty much pen them in, and City, to their credit, much deserved, pen them in the second half. First half was probably much a non-event, so to speak. But second half, they absolutely, I thought, were on top, dominant, and Arsenal did not have the answers. Now, that's going to live with you because they're your nearest rivals.
Yeah.
They're the boogeyman that you can't get past, so to speak. Yes, last year is Liverpool, but I didn't think it was a title race anyway last season. So City are the hurdle for Arteta coming from City. City is that kind of level, is that bar. Two quick things that you spoke about Arteta perhaps not being as likable, and I take your point about the Guardiola thing. I think perhaps the fact that people know that it's coming to an end, it's a case of listen, if he has to win one more, fair dues, and all the rest of it. I think Arteta has, in my opinion, and I try and critique it as honestly as I can. I think he is very likable in his press conferences. I've seen his pre-match conferences, post-match conferences. Listen, he's won more games, so he's going to be in a decent mood. But I think he deals with things fairly well. He's not surly in the press conferences. He's not got back into a back and forth with any reporters in any kind of negative spats, all the rest of it. I think he tries to G up his troops and the fans. He says the right things. There's a court controversy and all the rest of it. You may see that turn differently with the pressure ratcheting up in the next couple of games. You might see an episode where you say like he's losing the plot, so to speak. But I think that's pressure, that's emotion, and all the rest of it. And we should show a bit of good grace. But I think, and his even on the side antics, yes, he comes out of his technical box at times, and I think he needs to be disciplined with that. But I think he's again really just kind of trying to keep the troops on edge and motivated. The thing about Arteta, what's for me super interesting, I was talking to a friend who watched the game with me yesterday, is with Liverpool, it was so interesting because you've got, in a sense, Jurgen Klopp, who's, I guess, won Bundesliga and he comes to Liverpool and it takes him back to the big time and amazing. All those players went through a wonderful journey. The second title, I guess, under Slot, you've already got that spine who've got a great deal of experience, and Klopp's won it as well, and it was obviously on a slot. But you get the point in terms of Champions League and all the rest of it. It's not as though they had to lead. They got over the first one, and then they had the experience of winning other major competitions. Arteta's also trying to get his first one. I mean, FA Cup, fine, it's a domestic cup, but it's not as though you've got a manager dragging his troops from experience and winning stuff. So for him also, it's kind of looking to kind of break over that line to establish himself in the upper echelons of top coaches. I think most people accept he's a top coach, but of course you need validation with major competitions and major trophies. Looking ahead at you just very quickly, I'm sure we'll just touch on it briefly, the City-Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge. Today I saw Rory Jennings on TalkSport saying he's keen for Chelsea to lose. I'm not sure what your son thinks, but let's just argue the fact that City win that game and they're 6 points behind with a game in hand. Obviously, the next Premier League game is City and City Arsenal. Huge game. I'm sure we'll talk about it later on this week. But in terms of the psychology for Arsenal, you're heading into that game. You've spoken about the outcomes from, or the negative outcomes from the League Cup final. You've got this. They're clearly not playing well. City are offensively purring. Let's say they win today. They've got a week off. Arsenal have got to navigate Champions League. You would argue all the momentum and all the kind of positive vibes is resting with Man City. How do you see Arsenal heading into that game after they've obviously navigated either winning or losing? And losing against Sporting would be absolutely, I mean, that would just be a burden to carry heading into that Etihad game, thinking, well, we've been bounced out of 3 competitions recently, and the last one is teetering when we had the most established lead. How do you see the mentality of Arsenal heading into that game? Do you see it as an opportunity, or do you think they're going to get walloped?
No, I think the fact that you've sort of mentioned the sporting game, I'm going to use the word pivotal already, but I'll use it again. That's very, very important. I think if they win on Wednesday, is it Wednesday that they're playing or Tuesday?
Yeah,
Uh,
Wednesday.
if they win on Wednesday, they'll be in a much more buoyant mood. I think that's the key. If they lose against Sporting, I think that probably, I'd almost sort of say that they'll lose. That would guarantee a loss because I think psychologically they'd be absolutely traumatized because I think that just will be too much. So that game is one where they've almost got to focus more on that game because I think winning that game will give them a tremendous amount of confidence because in a sense it's almost a safety net. They're almost sort of thinking, well, look, we're still in the Champions League. They can approach the game. If they lose that game, it's all the eggs in one basket, and that the expectation of that, the pressure of that, perhaps will just be too much because obviously it already shows that they cannot, or at least they're finding it difficult to cope with the pressure.
Yep.
So That to me is such an important game, and as I said, if they don't come through, I mean, you'd expect them to come through because the hard part they've done. Uh, I'd certainly expect them to win that game, but to me, that will be the pivotal game. But even if they win that game, it's still going to be really, really tough. I think City. I mean, we're talking almost as if City has won today. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not a
yeah,
foregone conclusion. And sort of Mo was obviously as a Chelsea fan, he obviously wants Chelsea to win, but this is probably the first time where he won't mind if they got beat. So but Chelsea are not going to be an easy proposition. But I would expect, I think the confidence that City have, they've been here, they've done it, so they've got obviously the wherewithal to be able to sort of cope with the expectation. And you're right as well. I mean, you talked about Semenyo. I think the signings that they made in January were
yeah.
magnificent. I mean, in terms of shoring up the defense with Gehi and adding some attacking force with Semenyo, absolutely magnificent. I mean, in terms of January windows, that is as good as it gets, really, especially in the English Premier League. So really, really shrewd signings made. Obviously, spent it's not a huge amount of money considering what clubs spend in January, but that was I'd almost sort of think if they win the league, uh, it will be down to those signings. I've got to be honest, it will be down to those signings because the change of play from sort of sort of slightly pragmatic to going back to almost reverting back to type it sort of is down to those signings that they made, especially Semenyo. Let's see what today brings.
Yeah, just very quickly, you're right. First half of the season, it was Haaland or bust, and their football didn't seem as cohesive. We've got to give credit to Man City. The board looked at the situation and said they're still entitled to be won here if we make the right signings in January, and they have done, and they may well win the Premier League title. So I think they deserve immense credit for not necessarily giving up on the season and giving the coach, a legendary coach, the tools that he needs to go and win another Premier League and not just kind of kicking it down the road onto next season and seeing it as a rebuild year. So I think they deserve massive credit for ultimately keeping Arsenal kind of honest, knowing that if we get it close enough, then our experience may well see the situation through. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, back end of this week or your
Mm,
big preview heading into Sunday's game. Obviously, a huge game today. What I would say is very quickly this, irrespective of the form that Arsenal have shown, if you remember, I've been talking about it for quite some time, that I believed that irrespective of the situation, they had to go to the Etihad and win because these players needed the psychological boost, not just for this season, but just generally, that they can go in April, in May, away to the toughest grounds and overcome the situation and look at the opportunity that presents itself. Chances are, let's say they're 6 points behind. Yes, City will have a game in hand, but the narrative should be simple. And this might be weighing them down. I understand it depends how you relay the message. But you go to the Etihad, you win that game of football, and I think you're there. You're pretty much there. And
mm, yeah.
I wouldn't normally say that because of the games to come, but I cannot foresee a situation where Arsenal go to the Etihad next week, win that game of football, which I think they're very unlikely to do. Let me be very clear. But I think that's the opportunity that presents itself. You go there, you lay a marker, you win that game of football, and you're 90% there in terms of having one hand on the trophy. And that's the opportunity that presents itself. Very difficult. I would argue goal difference is going to be perhaps a little bit of an issue in terms of some of the approaches into these games. They were absolutely woeful yesterday. If they play like that on Sunday, it's going to be an absolute pasting with the City attack at the Etihad. And you can imagine most people will be like, they're done, they're cooked.
Mm.
There's no way back. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Again, I still see next Sunday as a test. It's obviously a test, but what I mean is it, it's a market, it's an opportunity for the players to say, look, what are we really about? And if they're about this business about winning Premier League titles, and you go there and you bring a performance and you try and win that game of football.
I think you should be in the dressing room. I think that as a pre-match sort of pep talk would be far more beneficial. I've just got a feeling that Arteta's going to revert to type, cautious, but I think maybe that is the mantra that they need. It's almost like sort of saying, right, let's be on the front foot. But it's a mouth-watering sort of prospect next week. I can't wait, and obviously we're going to do a shoot on that in a few days' time. Right, enough about what's happening at the top. It's what's happening at the bottom, which obviously bothers me much more. I'm already disappointed with what happened on Friday. There was a bit of a meltdown with Leeds fans. I was in London, not too far away. I was in Leytonstone, which is a stone's throw away from the London Stadium. So we were watching the game. I was obviously with the my sister's sort of husband and her family, and it was. I mean, at 1-0, I thought, come on, Wolves, just do what you've been doing because they've been playing all right. And then they just down tools. It was just embarrassing. I mean, the celebrations of the West Ham sort of fans, the players, that almost it looked as if they knew that they're safe now. It obviously sort of brings us right into the mix. I mean, we were in the mix, but I was saying to the group because they were all saying, "Oh well, it's Spurs who are going to go down." I said, "No, no, no, no. You keep on saying Spurs. It's going to be Leeds. We're going to go down." And that result. I mean, I was hoping at best that they might have just got a draw West Ham. Because I thought West Wolves were in decent form, so I thought it's not a gimme. They had a tough match. I say a tough match against us. They had a very long game against us, albeit it
Yeah,
was very smart. He rested a number of players,
yeah.
but it was a reasonably short turnaround from Sunday. Albeit it was two home games, so maybe there was no travelling involved. But that is West Ham safe, not just by the result, by the performance. That was a powerful performance. That was a dominant performance. So they've sort of scraped their name off that list, so they're not part of the mix. The only two teams, I think, Forest too good, they won't go down. Spurs, I think they're going to have that deserving new manager sort of bounce. We've lost three key players when really we're a side that needs everybody sort of fit and able. So we're down, we're down. Might as well stop the season.
I mean, look, I mean, I was watching that FA Cup game against West Ham, and obviously your manager spoke about it, that in true typical Leeds fashion, giving Ayub heart attacks. You wouldn't have done it any other way, let's be honest. Game done and dusted. And then it's not done and dusted. Like I said, often is the way for Leeds United Football Club. But look, I was wondering when I was watching that game whether or not it's probably it goes against every football born in your body, but whether or not it's just better just to fall on the wrong side of that. I think the way the
No.
game went, I think the way the game went, I think if they then lost that game, I think that would have had a debilitating impact in terms of just the mental scars of it. I just wonder whether or not, I think the game was away, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
whether or not you would have before a ball was kicked, whether it was just probably decent for them or okay for them, knowing that the primary objective is to stay in the league. But listen, football's about glory. It's a day at Wembley. No doubt you'll be doing your best to go and watch the game, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a huge game. Chances are that the road ends there. Chances are, I say, but it's an opportunity to get to an FA Cup final, and I think Leeds United should be taking and maximising all of those opportunities. But look, I think in terms of the Premier League, Ayub, I'm with you. I think the injury to is it Stack? I think that's a big one. That
Yeah.
would be a massive worry for me because I've been very impressed when I've watched him. You are short of goals, to be fair. So I think that could be an issue. But look, Spurs are still 3 points behind you, and they've got to show that they can win a game of football. Now, De Zerbi coming in, obviously he's a top manager. There's no doubt, Premier League experience. I actually don't think I was having a long discussion with my friend about this yesterday when we went for a walk post Arsenal Bournemouth just to get some much needed fresh air. But we were discussing the fact that De Zerbi, I think game week one, De Zerbi at Spurs, you're not even talking about, relegation, in my humble opinion, in terms of the football that he plays. It's relatively open, it's expansive. I just wonder, though, in this current state, and I think this is what some of the Spurs fans had in terms of misgivings about De Zerbi at this juncture, which is that it's not really football that we need. What we need is to instill a bit of character, a bit of fight, because I still see them having situations in the next couple of games where they'll go a goal down at you, where they'll have a bit of bad luck. Maybe they go down to 10 men, something happens. And I think that goes beyond tactics and approaches and all the rest of it. I think then it comes down to attitude, fight, staying in. It's similar to what Arsenal are facing right now, but in a very
Mm.
different way. That can you handle the pressure that comes with that you set of players might be responsible for taking this football club down into the second division of football? Like that, there's a pressure attached and associated with that. And I don't know if him coming in for the last 7 games is suddenly going to mean 7 games, 7 wins. I don't see it that way because I think it's a different time right now in terms of what that club needs. They'll need a bit of luck. They'll need a bit of good fortune. They'll need some good performances. I think they're playing what is it Sunderland away? Are you?
Yeah.
I think let's see what today brings. I'll be watching that game, but I still think that Leeds, the points, the goal difference, still much superior to West Ham, and your fixtures are you in terms of how it could have fallen are still kind. And now, look, those will be pressurized games, but I know you've got Burnley, I know you've got Spurs, you've got some other tough games. I think you've got West Ham as well. So it's in your hands, it's in their hands as well to
Mm.
some extent. But games like Burnley, you've got to think we've got to win. I mean,
Yeah.
these are games that we have to find a way to win. So the fixtures are fine in terms of what it could be. If you had a murderer's row of Arsenal, City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, and all the rest of it, then I'd say, look, listen, I think you are probably going to find yourself in the final knockings, perhaps on the wrong side of that coin. But look, I think you're still in there with a shot. I think you've got the games to pull it out. I think you've got the games at Ellen Road, most importantly, to pull it out. You're going to need a few critical big performances, maybe from, dare I say, DCL and one or two others. But I still think the fact that you've got your head just above the parapet might still just keep, again, Spurs have to bridge that gap with a win. I think you play them soon, don't you? I think you've
Yeah, yeah. We
Spurs.
play them
Yeah,
as well. Yeah,
Spurs.
we play them as well.
So these are going to be the kind of relegation six pointers that you that's going to ultimately define your season. I don't know how your ticker is going to be able to take some of these games because Leeds don't thrash anyone. They don't necessarily get thrashed by anyone. So all these games are kind of in the final knocking, similar to Arsenal in the last 10 minutes. So listen, I still I think you can do it. I think you can do it just because I think you've got the games to do it. I know the nerves will be aplenty, but I still think being 3 points clear of Spurs, albeit with a very tight goal difference, both of you. So I think goal difference could come into it. I still think you're in, I'm not going to say the box seat, but it's not all doom and gloom. The problem is Monday, you're going to Old Trafford. Not a game that I'll be watching. It'll be too late. But if you lose that, then chances are. I mean, imagine at 2 p.m. you're going to be watching Spurs Sunderland, surely.
No, I've got a wedding to go to. So it's been
Goodness me.
last 2 weeks. It's been sort of at the weekends. It's been weddings. So in one sense, it's all right, but it's not as well because obviously it's like I mean, last week was fine because obviously there was no games. But this week, it's. I mean, today it's not so bad in the sense that Leeds aren't playing, so I haven't got that tension. But it's equally tense because Spurs will be playing, Forest will be playing, so obviously I'll be keeping an ear open for the scores on there. But just going on that, the reason
Mm,
why, I mean, there's obviously, as a Leeds fan, I mean, I'm a pessimist because of obviously the sort of last sort of 10, 15 years of being a Leeds supporter because we never do things easy and we've had a lot of times sort of in the lower leagues for a reason because obviously we've not been that great. So many Leeds fans are pessimists, sort of based on sort of recent history. Uh, the reason why I'm really sort of dejected is because I mean West Ham have been playing. I mean they've picked up the form, and on Friday, if you'd have seen that performance, that was a performance of a team that's not going to go down. Uh, Spurs as well with Zerbi, and I think that's a smart choice. You talked about whether that was the right choice. I think it's the right choice purely, and this is my sort of rationale behind why it's the right choice. I think Big Sam or somebody of that ilk most of the players who play for Spurs have not really probably been in relegation battles. So Big Sam would have the kinds of conversations he would have had would have been alien. I think with the team and the players that they have, the only way that they can survive is just to play their game, and they're probably sort of better served under De Zerbi to do that. Because if Big Sam came, he'd be talking in sort of low blocks and formations and this and that. They wouldn't have had a clue sort of what that is all about. So maybe this is perhaps a wise choice. I hope it isn't, but it sort of makes sense to me why they've gone for somebody like De Zerbi. Forest are just too good. Too good. Simple as that. I mean, it still sort of beggars belief, and I think that's more to do with their lunatic owner. These sort of chopping and changing. I mean, Nuno would have been a fantastic. I mean, if Nuno had stayed, they wouldn't be in this position. But that lunatic who's obviously running that club. I mean, at the end of the day, he's fit to do what he wants. He's sort of he's paid his money, so he can do what he wants. But they've just got too much quality. But it's a tough game for them because Aston Villa obviously still sort of wanting to make sure they cement a top four spot. But perhaps they're going to be a little bit more relaxed because it could be six clubs qualifying for the Champions League. So it maybe perhaps is not as critical. So maybe they might just sort of take their foot off the pedal. They're still in the Europa Cup, aren't they? The Conference Cup or
Yeah,
whatever it's called.
yeah.
So it's I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And Forest are at home. They're a very, very good side at home. So I expect Forest to get a result today. I expect Spurs to get a result as well today, which then means that when we play tomorrow, oh my word, we're going to lose. Uh, it's not a pleasant proposition to be a Leeds fan right at this moment in time.
It never is. I'm going to finish off with two questions that you very quickly for you to answer, for me to answer, for us to quickly move on. Who's going to win the Premier League title? I'm going to give you one last chance because you've flipped and flopped on this, as you do with
Yes.
many of your opinions, unfortunately. But I'm going to nail you down to this. Hold your feet to the fire. One last chance. Who's going to win this Premier League title?
What? Right. My head still tells me it's Arsenal. That's my head because I think there's just too much ground to make up. Uh, but they're in with a shout. But it's Arsenal. I hope I'm
I
wrong.
think I have this. Everything that I've watched from, I've watched more football this season than I've done, I think, in my entire life in terms of actually watching games
And
of football.
I'll just stop you there. What's over your shoulder? My goodness me, that brings back memories.
I'm not sure. I think they're showing some best
Oh, I
goals or
think they
something
showed
along those
Tony
lines.
Yeboah. It's gone now, but
Oh,
they
good
got
times, good
Tony
times, good
Yeboah
times. Yes,
against Liverpool.
against
Yeah, go
David,
on. Sorry. Yeah,
against David James.
yeah.
Uh, and I think it's going to be Man City. I think it's going to be Man City, and I think that's going to be me stopping doing some podcasts with you for about 3-4 months. But no, I think I think it will be Man City because I think I've seen this movie before, and I just don't have the confidence that they've got what it takes, especially after yesterday. But anyway, one last question: who's going to go down? Who's going to take that final spot?
Leeds, Leeds, and I'm not just as I said. I mean, there is a pessimism to being a Leeds fan, but this is also based on I think having an understanding of football. I mean, we've got injuries. I mean, you talked about Stack, not just Stack, Joe Rodon as well. The only sort of real creative player we have is Noah Okafor, who actually has been playing reasonably well, and he played really, really well at the start of the West Ham game. He's injured as well. So when you're a team at the bottom, you need your absolute sort of full squad, especially your better players to be available. We've lost three of our best three, I would sort of say. So it could end up Leeds getting relegated and you don't win the league. That's gonna be that's gonna be I don't know. That's
It's going to be a very depressing podcast to cover. I can imagine. Yeah, but I mean, listen. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I was going to say you're used to getting relegated, but to be fair, Arsenal are used to coming second. So I think I've not got much to lean on there. Listen, I think it's going to be Spurs. I said Spurs a while ago. I've not seen anything to change my mind. Do I listen? Of course, I think they had to make the change, and it's not that I'm against Zerbi. I just don't think it's going to be 7 games to go when you need it, it's about the intangibles, and I'm not sure if he's all of a sudden going to arrest that slide. It's no kind of criticism of him. It's just more about what's needed at this juncture when you're in this position, unexpected position. You need a very different kind of mentality, backs to the wall, dig in, fight, scrap, and all the rest of it. It takes positional discipline, all the rest of it. Anyway, I think it'll be Spurs, but let's see how it ends up. So yeah, let's take it away.
That's I hope that is the case. That would be absolutely brilliant news if that is the case, and that will be certainly a cause for celebration. But on that happy note, which is unusual, I think we'll sort of say goodbye to you. So as always, pleasure to be with you guys.
I was just thinking. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just thinking. Actually, we talked about doing a podcast where Leeds get relegated and Arsenal come second, and how that depressing would that be? Well, on the flip reverse, if Leeds stay up, Spurs go down, and Arsenal win the title, surely we've got to have Moggy on.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean that we'll have to do a special one. If that is the case, there'll have to be a special shoot. I might have to fly over to Abu Dhabi to do it.
We'll try and accommodate some sun for you.
All right, excellent, excellent. All right, okay. So as always, a pleasure to to speak to you guys. Until the next time, take it easy, stay safe. We'll see you soon. Ta-ra for now.